Well, now it begins. All the shifting rules. You got National Grid. I've heard like 4 different stories now for each time. It looks like he's measuring the length. I'm impressed he got up the hill on a 2-wheel drive truck. Well, that fired right up this morning. That's the g372xt that I did some of those modifications. And I spent the weekend doing stuff with my old John threads, and now have to go out and do some block and tackle type work. So we're going to run this for a couple of weeks and just see if it holds up and see whether or not it actually has turned into what I think is going to be a useful saw. It's got decent power now in starts and restarts, doesn't stall. I was having trouble before where it just shut off and I couldn't get it to start again. And that behavior seems to have ended. So I'm cautiously optimistic that we have a saw here. Now remember, we started out with the g372xt as it came out of the box, and I swapped out the ignition for an OEM 372X torque ignition system, and I swapped out the handle, which was sticking. The throttle was sticking on that one pretty bad, and I put in an OEM handle. The immediate improvement was the fact that the OEM handle worked, feels right, and the anti-vibe springs were the right length. That made it feel a lot better as a saw. I'm not happy with the handle and a bunch of other things as compared to, say, that first G372 that I got from them. Remember, there's 3 of them. But this one here, after a fair amount of time and not giving up on it, I'm cautiously optimistic that we've got it, in a useful form. Now, Bob and I kind of were kicking that around a little bit this weekend. We spend all the time with the cookies and stuff like that, and it doesn't really matter. And, everybody has their different set of priorities. On the grand scale of things, for the most firewood types or hobby types, an extra second is beating your chest, but it doesn't really make a difference on the job. And there's those who are going to argue like crazy, oh geez, it just runs so much smoother and nicer and all that. Well, yeah, there's some truth in that, but my old saws run nice too, and there's sort of a cool factor running those old saws. So it really just depends. The pro, they're going to have to make their own decisions. They have their own business metrics, Each one's going to do their own thing. That's part of the beauty of the American system, capitalism. You can go out and spend money and invest in any way you like to earn money. People will rationalize and do what they need to do, and as long as they're feeding the family, who cares? And the bottom line for me on these things here, if they put a smile on your face, and it takes an extra half a second to do it, and you want to spend $300 to get that, well, that's fine. The end game is that smile, so it's a success if that's what you get. And that's really where I come down on all that. Now these kit saws and these clone saws, I think they have a purpose. I really do. I mean, the fact of the matter is, even after all that work I've done on that saw, it's a useful machine. It'll more than pay for itself. The aggravation was an adventure for me. It wasn't something that really matters. If I was a person going out there trying to make a living with a saw, that'd really get me upset. But as a hobbyist, it's a challenge. So it doesn't matter that much. Again, different priorities, different things that people focus on. And the net result is that's a saw that I believe could run a season or 2 doing firewood for a guy, more than pay off its initial cost. And here's the thing, both with the kits and debugging these clones, what an excellent education tool to learn about saws, learn about small engines in general. And the value that I place on that is actually higher than someone might expect, because knowledge is a wonderful thing. The things you learn on these saws translate right to the better professional saws, OEM or whatever, and allows people to do more of their own type of work and get the rewards of having ownership in what they've done. I'll tell you what, it's a lot more fun to me to run that thing there after going through the trials and tribulations than picking one off the shelf and firing it up and, cutting wood, because there's no ownership in that. It's way more rewarding to me and most of the people who I know to take a challenge like that and make it successful than to send it off and hire someone to do it, because all you've done then is conceded you couldn't do it. You know what I'm saying? So there's sort of this extra cool factor that you get by making these things work that is kind of an intangible, but it's real. And I get it. And I indulge and I enjoy it. I complain about them, but half the time the complaining is to find a problem that I can turn around and solve. And there's your reward, solving the problem and having it work. I don't know if that makes any sense. But I got a lot of work to do. We have a nice day out and I really need to take advantage of this day. So I'm fishing all this seasoned firewood out of here. This is like the second or third load I've already done. All the split wood I had up here from this time last year I've already got. Then I'm going to yank these logs out of here and bring them up to the house where I can process them. But I've got a day's work to get all this stuff up and out. And then we have the ones up there we just did the other day. I'll let them sit for a year or two. But kind of getting around the farm. We got through the middle section and now I'm getting back to these. For the most part I'm getting the ones we cut up and out. You get this little waste like down there, I'm not going to get those. They're all rotted. Plus we're way in the swamp. But I may get some of it. I'll work at it. If it freezes up, I'll be right down in there to pull them up and out. But right now, today is so muddy, I'm just going to get what I can. That's it. Boy, I think I'll make this video playing in the mud, because that's what it's been all day. Fishing out those logs where I can hook onto them with the 3-point, you know, my hooks. So this is really the last one for today. To try this again, I had to go cut some notches in the side because the chain kept slipping off the log. That Chinese G372xt fired right up second pull, and cut those notches and chained up, and let's see if we can get that thing out of there. And this is the little woodshed we built. See, I'm getting pretty low, so I needed to get some firewood in here. Got the splitter right there, so I can do it when it's snowing. And these are the blocks. Bob and I block all that pretty much. These are my logs. And the reason I'm leaving them log length like that is if I have to move them. If I don't use them, they store better as logs. So this is my reserve pile right here. And some of that stuff is pretty big. Some of it you've seen on your videos too. Hey Flashman. See him pop his ears, let's flash. I got this stand. This is the second one I had purchased from Walmart. It's their more expensive camera stand. Neither one of them lasted very long. Both of them had issues pretty much out of the box. One of them, these legs wouldn't stay. Those clamps wouldn't bite down, so the leg wouldn't stay extended. And then they have this tendency of either having the pins break out or the actual legs, they're brittle. So when it got cold, they just started breaking. You know, weather just changed again. It's a good thing I got that stuff hauled up out of the swamp, right? Winter has returned. to the fellow who's getting these. The way I like to do it is this. Right? Set that recessed area over the top of your bearing. Get your nut a little more than halfway up. Put a washer in there. Put a Mad Hat in there. Set like this. But you got to make sure this is reverse thread, that thing gets all the way seated before you start doing anything. And once that puller there gets seated on the crank, then run your nut down. You know, and then you can put your handle on it and start your cranking. Then on the other side, I've got it where that will hit on these probably about 5/1000ths before that sets on the bottom by the seal. So again, I do that, and I put a washer in the top hat, and then run this right there. Of course, getting your nut up in here somewhere. Pull it the other way through. Make sure it seats as well. You know, you're going to get an extra nut because this is a demonstration. So on this one, run that nut, you know, up around there somewhere, through the top hat, and then just run it like this. And make sure it seats on the crank before you wind your nut down. And that's how you pull the other side through. Yep. So once you get them stacked the way I showed you, both sides, and make sure that the crankjack has bottomed out before you turn the nut down, right? Then you set your handle on like that. It's pretty obvious. And you're gonna have to go buy yourself a 1 1/8" wrench. Then just start pulling it, just like you see me doing the video. So we're gonna take a look at Common Service Tool and see if we can find some information about that errant 550. So it looks like it's leaning itself out big time. That's not good. A variety of things could be causing that. And it only had 6 starts and about 49 minutes of running. Gets to full RPMs and spent most of its time idling. And it has no, check that out, no error codes. None. Runs like crap, but there's no error codes. Well, I'm going to flash the carburetor, but I'm going to put a different ignition on it. We're going to give it a shot with a different ignition and see if that helps any, because that's a shot in the dark. You know, the thing is, with no error codes and it running lean like that, about the only thing left is a bad spark plug, which I changed, and the ignition system. I mean, this is really, really frustrating. This is that one you saw me run a while back. It's really not out of whack. It's a little lean, but it's not out of whack. You know? So anyway, I'm going to shut this off, plug in a different ignition system, flash the carburetor with the old ignition, put it back on, and see if it runs better. Shot in the dark, a Hail Mary. Well, the real trick to getting this in without having to pull the cylinder is being able to fish that grounding wire all the way through to there. There it is. If you look really careful where I've got the Allen wrench, and if you look underneath the Allen screw, there's the banjo for the for that grounding wire. I fished the wire through with this. I went and grabbed a hold of this, and I pushed it all the way through to the other side and hooked it on the, there's like a little plastic set of forks there. So I went and was able to hook it through and pull off like that, and then the screw would sit right down in there. Feeling pretty proud of myself. This saw has been a real pain in my neck. Not happy with this saw. I was never really happy with the 550s. The 550 Mark IIs were, in my mind, a necessity. You know? Well, I think they were able to solve most of the 562 issues. I don't think they ever really did get a handle on the 550s. I don't think they did. I know I'll get grief for saying that, but of course part of my angst on these is some of the parts on these saws come from places other than Husqvarna. It's very important that you get this little screw in here. Right here. See how that goes under the flywheel? You got to make sure that it's actually back. This deflector right here pushes it in, but this screw here holds it from being hit by the flywheel. I think what I'll do now is assemble the flywheel, because I use a puller that requires me to pull the lugs for the pull start assembly. I don't know what you call these stupid things. Yeah, the only way I really know how to do these things is to basically assemble as much as you can with an air box and the carburetor, and then sort of like scoop it in. And then making sure that the two air horns at the bottom go into that intake manifold properly. You know, it's a little bit of a hope and pray. Can't go too tight with these. You got to make sure that that ring is in there. Pop these in the anti-vibe. And same over here. Making sure that that's above. It is. Let me get the handle on it and we'll do a test start and see whether or not we have a saw, or do I have yet another disappointment. When these plastic screws, I just bring them down to where they seat. I don't try to tighten on them, you know. Alright, let's see if it starts. Because before all it would do is fart and black, and I just wouldn't want to start at all. I haven't started. Let's see if we have a saw. Alright, this little rubber piece right here, on that one there, it had popped out of that. I had to get that back in like this on the saw. And let's try it again. That is a much better running saw. I think I have a fix. I think I'm ready to bring the saw back. Wow, that was an ordeal. And that was the ignition system right here that caused all that grief.